beginners. So today we are talking about improvising or getting our feet wet with some basic improvisation ideas. We're going to be sticking with a very simple harmonic progression. We're not going to be getting that far into the harmonic side of improvising. We're mainly going to be thinking in more of a horizontal melodic type fashion. We're going to be sticking with the key of F major. We're going to be dealing with a very simple harmonic progression, a 2-5-1 in F. The chords being G minor 7, C7, F6. And this is a pretty common chord progression you find in lots of different styles of music, including calypso. So what I've done is made a little loop to practice with, a basic calypso rhythm outlining this simple 2-5-1 harmonic progression. So that loop is at the end of this video as well. If you want to practice with it, it can be very helpful for some students. Some students just prefer a metronome, but I do think that the track's a good idea, especially if you're not yet familiar and comfortable with this calypso type style. Really kind of getting yourself into how this groove kind of feels is a good thing to use the track for. So let's start with some scales. All right, we're going to go over several scales to begin with, some ways to practice them, some ways to practice them with the track, and then we're going to get into some improvisation ideas and kind of break it apart piece by piece, give you some different approaches to getting your feet wet with improvising. So we'll start with just an F pentatonic scale. All right, so F major pentatonic, I should say. So F major pentatonic is the root, second, third, fifth, sixth of the scale. And then the root again. So in the case of F major pentatonic, we're talking F, G, A, C, D, F. So what I want you to do on your instrument is practice that scale starting from the lowest tonic pitch you have on your instrument all the way, the full range, as far as you can go on that scale, the highest part of your pan, and then all the way back down to the lowest note you can possibly go, and then back to that first tonic pitch. So let me demonstrate. So, starting from the lowest tonic pitch, as far as you can go on the range of your instrument, and then as low as you can go on the range of your instrument, and then back to that original tonic, I think is the best way to practice initially these types of scales. So, quick word, I'm going to do a lot of these demonstrations on a tenor pan because I'm a tenor player, but a lot of the approaches that I'm going to take can be applied to double seconds as well. So I'll do some examples on the seconds as well, just so you can get an idea of how that would be applied. All right, so here's some examples of that scale and how to practice it with the track. So we're starting with just eighth notes. So if the calypso rhythm's like, we're just going with really the quarter note if we're thinking about cut time. And so on and so on. So here's an example of that. So as you're getting used to this scale, you might want to try it in 16th notes or 8th notes if we're thinking cut time as well, along with the track, just to kind of work up your speed, work up your fluidity with this scale. So here's an example of that. All right, so to really start developing some fluidity with this scale, try to play the scale just as we were doing, the same approach as far as the range, like we were doing before, but we'll play it in several different rhythmic patterns. All right, we'll start with just D D D D D D D D D D D D. That rhythm, but playing the notes of the F major pentatonic. All right, so here's how that would be applied if we did it with the track. All right, next rhythm pattern. Dot 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 dot. First one was D D D D D D D D. Now we're going to bum 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 bum. So there's several sticking difficulties that may come up in this, and you can kind of solve those on your own as you're working through these patterns. But the video examples will help. Okay, next example, we'll get a little more syncopated. Da 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 da, that sort of rhythm. And so on and so on. Here's an example of that. And the final rhythmic pattern we'll use to practice this scale is all offbeat syncopated rhythm. Like that. 2, ready, and. So here's an example of how that would apply playing it over top of this practice track. Okay, so before we move on to some different scales, let's stick with the F major pentatonic for a second and start to work on some improvisation ideas. So, you have some fluidity now developed, practicing those scale exercises, different rhythms. Let's take a phrase, a very simple musical phrase, and try to improvise some variations of that phrase. All right, so I'll give you two phrases. This first one is based on the notes of F major pentatonic that we've been practicing. All right, so it's just this, very simple. That's the phrase. Starts on the 5th of the scale. Ends on the 3rd of the scale. So what you're going to do, put the track on. We'll get comfortable with the phrase first. And then put the track on and try to play that phrase over and over, but improvise some variations on it. Vary the rhythm, extend the rhythm out, perhaps change the order of the notes a little bit, perhaps repeat some 2-note patterns within the pattern itself. Lots of different ways you can vary this. And I don't want you to think too hard at first. Just try to see what you can come up with. So as just a quick example, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, here's another example. 2, 1, 2. And I'm using some calypso rhythms. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But that's the first idea. So we have a very, very basic musical phrase. And we're going to try to improvise some variations on it. So just to give you an example, here's a whole bunch of different examples of variations on that simple musical phrase that just came off the top of my head that I'm just improvising. So here's an example of that. hopefully this is helping a little bit to practice these phrases and improvising variations. I'm going to give you another basic phrase that you can use in order to improvise variations. So when you're watching the video examples of me improvising all these variations, don't feel like you need to transcribe what I'm doing. I'm just giving you examples of me improvising. The idea is for you to take that basic musical phrase and start coming up with your own ideas, your own variations. And it might take some time. Make sure you are patient with yourself, especially if you're brand new to improvising, because this could take a little bit of time. The second phrase I want to give you is this. Alright, so again, starting on the fifth. This time ending up on the root. Alright, so some variations. 1, 2, 1, 2. Alright, something like that. See, I just repeated a little bit. I added some kind of repetition of some of the notes within that pattern. So here's another example of a whole bunch of improvised variations on that simple phrase. And again, don't feel like you need to transcribe these or anything. These are just kind of to get your gears turning and sort of give you some ideas of where you want to go with this. Okay, moving on, let's do the actual F major scale, the full diatonic scale now that we've done some pentatonic ideas. Let's deal with the whole scale. So this one you're hopefully at least somewhat familiar with. Again, we're going to practice it in the same way we did the pentatonic scale. So we're starting on the lowest root on your instrument. Going as high as you can, which in this case, on this pan, is the seventh, the E natural. And then going as low as you can. And then back up to the tonic. Okay, so it's going to be different on every pan if your range is a little bit different than what I have here. But that's the basic idea. You start from the lowest tonic, the full range, go up as high as you can on your pan, as low as you can on your pan, and back to that original tonic. So again, start with doing this with quarter notes, with the track, and then go to eighth notes, and then do all those rhythmic variations like we did before. Ba-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And so on and so on. Da-da, da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da. And do the whole scale, practice the whole scale along with the track with all those rhythmic variations. So here's a bunch of examples of that. Playing the scale with the track in quarter notes, playing it with eighth notes, and playing it with all four of those rhythmic variations. before we move on from the F major diatonic scale, let me just give you one more scale pattern that's a really good thing to practice in order to gain more fluidity with this scale. We're just doing this type of pattern. And then from the second, from the third, from the fourth, and when you get to the highest note on your pan that you can find, do the same thing backwards, coming down. All the way as low as you can go, and then back up to the tonic. All right, so this is just a really good pattern to practice and something you can definitely use while improvising as well, and it's going to force you to work out some stickings and just get more fluid with this particular scale. So here's an example of that pattern being played with the track. Final scale, the final F scale we need to do is a more blues type scale. This sometimes is called the major blues, sometimes called the sweet scale, but is used a lot in lots of different styles of music, including calypso. You hear pan players improvising using this type of scale often. And what it is the F major pentatonic scale with an added chromatic note between the second and third. So rather than, now we have, it gives it this kind of bluesy flavor because we have both the minor third and the major third in this scale. So there's lots of different considerations you need to take when using that chromatic note when improvising. But to start, you need to just sort of familiarize yourself with this major blues scale. So I took the same approach as we've been doing, starting on that tonic, going the full range of my pan, as high as I can go, as low as I can go, back to that original tonic. So let's do all the exercises like we've done, playing the scale in quarter notes, playing the scale in eighth notes, doing it with the different rhythmic patterns, da 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 da, and so on and so on. So here's some examples of all of that using the major blues scale. Let's get back to improvising now, and let's start dealing with your rhythm, development of your rhythmic language in a calypso type of style, which can be a very difficult thing. The first thing you need to do is listen to calypso. If you want to be able to solo, to improvise material on the spot, you need to be very, very familiar with the style itself, right? Just like you would need to be if you were playing a jazz solo or a rock and roll solo or whatever it is. You need to listen, listen, listen. to calypso music. And I would listen to singers. It's really going to help develop your rhythmic sense. This is originally a vocal style of music, so listen to Lord Kitchener, listen to Mighty Sparrow, and all the greats. Those are the first two names you should probably start with if you really want to get into some calypso. So what I want to do, this sort of exercise, kind of getting our feet wet, is give you some calypso rhythms to work with. And what you're going to do is improvise notes over a given rhythm. All right? So the first rhythm is a very kind of syncopated calypso type rhythm that you would hear played as a part of a solo or as part of a melody. Ba 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 da ba ba da ba da ba 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 bam ba dam. That's the rhythmic phrase. Ba da ba ba da ba da ba 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 bam ba dam. Ba da ba ba da ba da ba 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 bam ba dam. So the first thing, be able to click, clap, tap the beat, and sing that rhythm. Ba da ba ba da ba da ba 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 da, with the proper type of calypso phrasing. So listen to how I'm singing it. It's not quantized. You know, it's not dee 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 dee. It has a certain swing to it. Ba da ba ba da ba da ba 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 beat beat dee. All right. So familiarize yourself with that rhythm. And then what you're going to do is put on the track and improvise using perhaps the F major scale, maybe the pentatonic, maybe you want to try some of the blues scale. Improvise notes, improvise pitches using that rhythm. Be strict and just stick to that rhythm only. So here I just improvised a phrase. I did the exact same rhythm, ba da ba ba da ba da ba ba ba, beat beat dee. But I improvised melodically and found a pretty nice little phrase. So another example, 2, 3, and. 1, 2, another example, and. Okay. Whatever it might be. So here's an example of that. I'm taking basically like a solo, but using only that rhythm over and over and over again, but improvising different melodic phrases. Check this out. Okay, so the next rhythm that we're going to do is straight out of a calypso classic called Pan in Harmony by Lord Kitchener. There's this phrase that goes like this. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Ba ba da da, ba ba da da, ba ba da bam bam bam. That's the rhythm we're going to use. Ba ba da da, ba ba da da, ba ba da bam bam bam. All right, so we're going to do the same process. So familiarize yourself with that rhythm. 1, 2, 1. Ba ba da da, ba ba da da, ba ba da ba ba ba. Familiarize yourself with that rhythm, and then start to improvise melodically using only that rhythmic phrase. Okay? So here's an example, a bunch of examples of melodic phrases improvised using that particular rhythm. So the last thing we're going to do is I'm just going to give you an example of a solo, kind of taking a lot of these ideas and putting them all together and creating an improvised solo. So what we've laid out here should be weeks of practice, individual practice. So please be patient with yourself. Give yourself enough time to really kind of internalize this information. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you really kind of take your time and practice a lot and practice diligently and kind of thoughtfully, you'll get to where you want to go quicker, kind of taking it slow and really, really kind of respecting the process of developing this musical language. So the solo, I'm going to start with some simpler ideas, maybe some things that you're going to recognize from what we've done in this little instructional video, and then I'll kind of take it gradually further and further into some more advanced ideas, just to kind of give you a taste of where we can go with this. And again, remember, we're just dealing with a very, very simple harmonic progression here. We haven't even really got into the idea of playing over chord changes and thinking harmonically as we're soloing. We're just thinking melodically at this point. So I hope this video gives you a good jump start to kind of get your feet wet with some improvisation. And if there's any questions, please don't feel free to reach out to me. And keep in mind that at the end of this video, that track that I've been using, this is just a loop, just a kind of a simple calypso loop, is just the audio of that track is on there. So it's right attached to this video, so you can go ahead and just practice using the video. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot.